Hey everyone, welcome to another New Slang interview. I am your host, music journalist Thomas Mooney. We start off the week with episode 103, where I am joined by Oklahoma singer-songwriter Samantha Crain. Samantha is releasing her newest album, A Small Death, this Friday, July 17th. I always really like these albums where you're really able to get lost within them. You throw it on and there's these moments where you kind of just zone out because of a droning effect or something. During the conversation with Samantha, I ask her about this fever dream feel. I also kind of describe it as where you're like swimming in open water and you're never really able to see what's below you. I hate to say that there's an uneasiness to this record, but she does this like really incredible job of getting you to fall into a rhythm and then becoming hyper aware of that feeling. There's a strangeness to it, but she uses it with great effect to conjure this dread and anguish that she's channeling in some of these songs. Much of, if not all of this album, is really about the last few years in Samantha's life. She most definitely went through this dark period, something that she's called a full-on breakdown. She's had a handful of car wrecks that left her both physically and mentally drained and in pain. She was unable to play guitar, and you can feel that identity crisis in some of these songs, where she's left with a ton of questions and not many answers. She has learned how to play guitar since then in a way that where she's not feeling like her hands are just completely numb at an end of a 30-minute set. A lot of songwriters, they'll say that the songwriting process, that process of creating any kind of art really, that it's a cathartic process where you're able to make sense of things in your life. And that's really how A Small Death was created. It's very much informed by these last few years. But as you'll hear Samantha say in the interview, it's not all doom and gloom. You hear an optimism and an understanding in her voice. These songs are also about her rebirth and further understanding who she is and who she wants to be. The album isn't out until the end of the week, but if you want to get a sense of the album, go check out the songs Garden Dove and Pastime. Those are two of my favorites on the album. Before we get right into the interview, I wanted to talk to you a second about podcasting and Buzzsprout. It feels like everyone has a podcast these days. It's been really great to see people use podcasting as a storytelling outlet and to find like-minded people. You may have seen New Slang take a really big jump this past year, and one of the main reasons has undoubtedly been transitioning over to Buzzsprout as my podcast host. They've really made all the quote-unquote unfun things about podcasting so easy. For starters, that's why New Slang is on every major podcasting platform now, and why it's been so uniform and organized online. I've always enjoyed speaking with songwriters and bands and artists. That's a given. But now Buzzsprout has made it so much easier on the publishing side. So if you've ever been interested in launching your own podcast, I'd highly recommend Buzzsprout, which if you follow the link in the show notes, you'll be able to A, sign up with Buzzsprout, B, be given a $20 Amazon gift card, and C, help support New Slang. Again, that link will be in the show notes. If this is your first time listening to New Slang, please hit that subscribe button. New Slang is on all major podcast platforms, so I highly encourage you to subscribe. And while you're at it, give the podcast a 5-star rating. Leave a review telling us what you like most. Speaking of liking New Slang stuff, go hit up the New Slang store for your merch needs. I have a handful of items in the store right now, and while it may not seem much, you getting a koozie or a magnet or whatever, it does help keep the lights on. I'll throw a link into the show notes for easy access. All right, enough of the housekeeping notes. Here is Samantha Crain. Yeah, okay, I guess let's just go ahead and start off with, obviously you have this record that you've been working on, and I guess initially you were going to release it a few months back. And with this quarantine, with all of the social distancing, the pandemic in general, you pushed the release date back. I guess what went all into pushing the date back, and then also, you've been working on this record, and then all of a sudden you're ready to release it, and then you have to hit, as you said earlier, a great pause.
Yeah, it's so originally this record was meant to come out May 1st. Whenever I was overseas doing some tour dates in March, whenever the borders started shutting down and and travel became impossible. And so I kind of rushed home, not really knowing what was going on, and kind of just talked to like my labels, my booking agents, because I mean, there's no like precedent for what you do like with something like this. In the world of like independent musicians who rely pretty heavily on touring in order to like promote a record. If you're putting a record out without touring, it feels like everyone just took all of their time and money and energy and like decided to burn it in a chimney or something. Like it was just like, so I think that was like our idea in trying to move the release back was, okay, hopefully things reopen and we can reschedule tours and kind of give the album a fighting chance at actually getting out there. That really didn't end up happening. Like we've had to cancel the tour again, and things still are pretty shut down. So, but I think at this point, I was just like, I just need to get it out because I have, I did this record, like I recorded this record almost a year ago now. So, and I'm already like moved on in my head. So I use like writing as a cathartic thing. Once I've already like processed something, I use the writing and recording of music to move on from it in my life. So I just felt like this record, although it is like my favorite record I've made and the most important to me record that I've made, I'm also just like ready to move on from that point. So we kind of just decided like we're just gonna put it out, and whatever happens will happen. But it is kind of a bummer not to be able to like tour and try to, I guess, get the word out about it in that way. So, but it is what it is. We're all just kind of like making it up as we go, I think.
Yeah, it's so interesting on obviously we have this great technology, the internet, and being able to order any kind of merch online is such a luxury that you can have. But still, it seems like at the end of the day, people buy records at shows still, and that's like the thing that's been going on since the beginning of making records, and I don't know, it's I don't know, like it must feel like you're just kind of like in limbo in a way of just where you don't know if it's too early, too soon, too late to release something, and so you just it's just better to just get it out now and just see where it goes, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, well, what you were saying about like people just buy records at shows, it's because, I mean, and it's part of the reason why I haven't really been super active in the online concert thing, like streaming concert. There's just something about like a live show that was like why I got into music. It's about like sharing space with people, and that's why people buy records at shows, because they're like high off of that feeling of like sharing a common space and time, and energy and place with the other people there, and they want to like, they're like, what else can I do to like prolong this? And buying records, from the band while they're there is one of those things. And so um, there's just, I mean, we do have the internet as a tool um, for artists, like in this time whenever like our income is just like completely, snatched up from this pandemic. But it's just not like the same. And I think it has a lot of people like me sort of trying to find other avenues because the internet just like is not a connector in the way that actually sharing space with people is.
Yeah, it's like obviously you've seen a whole lot of people do the streaming shows and adapt and find other ways to play, but um, it's one of those things where I kind of connect it still to whenever you put a record on versus when you're streaming something on Spotify. There is a little bit of like a slight disconnect. There's something, as you said, like there's something in the air whenever you see somebody play live, and you just feel the that you feel like it's necessary to buy something, or if you're connected to it, or you know what I'm saying. Like there is I don't know what it is, like why there's because even for me, I've not really watched a whole lot of these streaming shows because I don't know, it doesn't feel the same.
Yeah, I think it goes down to like attention. Like it's really um, easy to split your attention up between different things whenever you're just like at home trying to like. Well, I've watched a couple of streaming shows like for artists that I really like, and I've enjoyed them. But I've also like put it on my calendar and like went home and like popped it up on my screen and like got a beer and treated it kind of like a show, and that's why I enjoyed it. But I think the attention thing is where it's at. Like if you're just watching it on your phone while you're also, just like stopped at a stoplight or waiting in the waiting room to at a doctor's office or something, your whole attention isn't into that. So it just becomes like part of the world of like content that you're, constantly taking in. So I think that's what a show has, it's the giving your whole attention over to it.
Yeah, I've talked with a few artists about how I guess they've had to adapt and how initially when they first started doing these, how strange it was to finish a song and there like not be any kind of anything, any kind of clapping, any kind of commentary, and then like it's kind of funny like how all you're seeing is just like these comments scroll through the screen and like they lean in and they're trying to read and trying to figure out what's going on, and it's like it's such just it's something totally different than the usual. I want to go back to something you said a minute ago about how you writing is a cathartic process for you. Obviously, it feels like when to me, I guess it feels like a lot of times an artist, a record will have like a time limit, where yeah, you do move on, and especially since you've been with these songs a whole lot longer than the general public. Has that always been the case for you with your music going back as far as you can remember?
I don't know. I've never really been self-aware enough to think about that. I think I only thought about it this time around um, because of sort of the process of releasing it and feeling that tension of I just need to get this record out, and having all this time to sit and think. I think this was the first time that I was really self-aware enough of that process within myself, at least with this record of um, how these songs came about. It wasn't, and I also noticed it a bit like at the beginning of the sort of pandemic when people started quarantining and things and people were stuck at home. I noticed a lot of artists immediately like getting online and being like, look, we just like made this record this week and we just wrote this song today and we just made this painting and and I was just like, how are people like creating right now? Like I'm still trying to figure out what's going on. And then it was like really apparent to me that artists use creating for different reasons. Like different artists have different purposes for it. Some artists use that creative time to process things while they're going through it. Some artists use the creative process as a cathartic thing, which is they've already spent the time sitting and thinking about things, tossing things over in their head, figuring out what it is that they're thinking about and how they feel about it, and then using the creative process to move on from it. And I never really thought about it from that standpoint, I guess, from that kind of dissecting it like that until this particular record and the release. So it's really hard for me to go back and put myself in the position of, or like the mindset of writing my past records and knowing like why I was doing it or how I felt. I feel like I've always kind of been like a heavy processor, like somebody who gets really quiet whenever they're thinking about things and removes myself from a group whenever I'm like really mulling over things in my head. So I think it's really possible that I've always used music more as a cathartic thing than as a processing tool. But I can't say for sure.
Yeah, that's a really interesting observation about how artists have been using this quarantine, because I guess like that's something that I've always kind of picked up on, but like you put it in probably better words. Um, it's almost like, not to like just split it up into two categories, but it's almost like where some songwriters or artists, the the art is like the beginning stages of processing, and then sometimes for others it's like kind of like that final stamp of putting it all together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know, that's really interesting. I have seen how a lot of artists have I guess like in this past few months talking with people, I've seen some people talk about how they've started writing a book, or they've started painting, or they've started drawing, or working on other creative outlets. Has that happened with you? Have you had any kind of that artistic space for other channels, other avenues?
Um, yes, but I'm always kind of doing that. Music is definitely like the biggest part of or I won't say biggest, but like the most noticeable part of like my creative life. It's how I mainly like make a living. Um, but I'm always like, part of my writing process is like all of the life that I live in between writing and recording, and that has a large amount of other creative stuff going on, just because to me that like puts me in the right frame of mind to keep making music, and what that includes is making other things too. So I'm always kind of dabbling in other stuff, not necessarily that I use it monetarily. It's just like letting the work be enough and enjoying that process. um so like painting, I've recently gotten into basket making, um writing, things other than songs. I've done like a book of sonnets. So yeah, I mean, I'm always just kind of making things. It's just what I like to do. So um, I find it to be an adjoining practice to like whatever somebody's main creative practice is. I think there's sort of this time that I think a lot of people call writer's block that I don't like actually think exists. I think what that is just like there's like an active and a non-active part of writing, and that writer's block part is just what I consider like the inactive part of writing, which is you're building up a well of ideas and things that will eventually move into the active part of writing. And it doesn't always take the same shape or form in terms of like length or time or anything like that. So, um, Yeah, I can totally see that during this time, if making music doesn't feel right, or somebody hasn't entered into that active stage of writing, creating something else can be really helpful, I think, in kind of moving things along.
Mm-hmm. I think like it's one of those things where the average person kind of to understand what an artist does is it's easy to I guess categorize you guys as songwriter, poet, painter, sculptor, and I guess like what I'm saying is talking with some other artists, they've never really even thought of it like that. They're just an artist that creates, and it doesn't. Some things go towards whatever, and some things become songs, some things become a painting, some things become whatever they go into, and it's I don't know, like it's just that it's really interesting to me to see how an artist will just view themselves as an artist versus trying to like get it down into I'm just a songwriter or I'm just
Mm-hmm.
a short story writer or whatever the case is.
Yeah, I think that idea of pigeonholing yourself is mainly like a I mean, and I'm not trying to get like political or anything here, but it's mainly like a Western capitalist idea. It's like people call themselves whatever the thing is that brings in their paycheck. They don't think of themselves outside of their worth as a worker. So that's why I think a lot of people tend to like it would be really easy for me just to say I'm a musician because that's what brings in my income. Um, but I don't think it would be correct because I spend an equal percentage of my time doing other things and being other things. So I just think that idea is probably something to like unpack within people, like notifying or noticing their worth outside of just like what brings in their paycheck.
Yeah, yeah. That's I mean, um, the other day I was talking with another songwriter who she had mentioned I guess like it goes to this whole thing about worth thing that you're talking about, where you saw a lot of you've seen frustration from people in general during all this because they feel like they need to be out and working and they need to be out in the doing whatever they do, and they're wanting to end the quarantine and just open the economy back up. This is a couple months back now, I guess, where it was really we were really shut down, and she was talking about how the reason why she thought people were so frustrated was because so much of their sense of worth is tied to what brings their income in or what they are able to produce. And I don't know, I felt like that was really insightful. And
Yeah.
now you talking about, uh, that being kind of a Western thing, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I really like that thought, I guess. This episode is sponsored by the Blue Light Live, my all-time favorite music venue and bar. As you know, the COVID-19 pandemic has been difficult on small businesses, music venues, bars, and musicians. There are a handful of ways that you can help, though. For starters, go over to www.bluelightlubbock.com, click on the merch tab at the top of the page, and order yourself a Blue Light hat, t-shirt, and koozie. Second, if you haven't purchased Monday Night Lights, a 50-song compilation of Lubbock songwriters organized by songwriter and photographer extraordinaire Charlie Stout and myself, head over to www.mondaynightlights.com. The proceeds of this 50-song collection go directly to the bartending staff, We launched it a few months back and we were blown away by the response and reception. And of course, if you're just hearing about it now, go ahead and get it today. This collection will never be on iTunes or on Apple Music, so the only spot you'll be able to get it at is at mondaynightlights.com. I'll throw both links into the show notes for easy access. All right, back to the show. Now, obviously, like this record, so much of this is about, I guess, like, has been about these car accidents and not being able to play and having to kind of like, set down your instrument and having like the toll physically and mentally. Now, obviously, I want to like tie this back to this question about identity. You have seen yourself as an artist, and I guess like when you take something away as a tool of a processing tool, as a part of your income, what you enjoy, I guess like what kind of toll has that had on you?
Yeah, I mean that what you are describing is pretty much the birth of this record. Like whenever I did get to a point where my hands stopped working because of these different health issues and the car wrecks and a bunch of sort of psychosomatic mental breakdown sort of things. Yeah, basically you eventually, if you're lucky, if you can get out of that very, very dark period, you start to kind of search for and learn about who you are as a person outside of sort of my self-appointment and identification as the musician Samantha Crain, which is just kind of like we all do that. We all have to form a sense of self in order just to move through the world in a survivable state, I think. And so when that starts to break down, when that gets taken away, that identity, it becomes like a really hard thing, and you're faced with that really uncomfortable position of getting to know yourself sort of from scratch. And so it's kind of like peeling off a costume that you're like put in as a child, and then like allowing yourself for the first time to kind of like dress yourself and like fully lean into like all of your curiosities and sensitivities, things like that. So that can be really hard, but eventually I think the excitement of that you get really giddy, and there's like these really sort of audacious stages of life where you just find all of these new facets of yourself, which is really exciting. And that's sort of what led to this record. I mean, the story behind the record and the songs are quite sad and traumatic, but I don't necessarily think that the record is sad, because what it's showing, what the thing that it was born from is that feeling of finding joy again through this process. So yeah, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of what the birth of this record was, and the feeling that produces.
Yeah, it's weird because like, yeah, you say, these dark moments, that has to be frustrating and uncomfortable, but at the same time, there is that you're finding your sea legs, I guess, and you're realizing like, oh, it's going to be okay. It's not going to be like this forever. Was there a moment that you can like point to that was like where it was evident that like you were like, I guess, finding yourself and getting back, not to say normal, but getting to a place of normalcy, I guess?
Hmm. Well, I so whenever I was at the beginning of this sort of period in my life, I was more or less like bedridden. Like I wasn't like leaving my house. I was just like shut down. Um, Eventually, I just was like, I don't want to live my life like this. What are the steps that I need to take in order to get out of this? So, that for me meant finding different therapies to go to recover, in both mental and physical therapies. And um, one of the things that one of my therapists suggested for me was walking. And I was just like, I don't understand what you're asking. You just want me to like go on walks. And I live in Oklahoma, where it's uh, not like a super walk friendly um, area, like, and everyone drives
Right.
cars. It's not like very common there's not like sidewalks at most places and stuff. So, and she was like, yeah, it's meditative. It helps you figure out like what your hangups are, in that sense being like, whenever you start thinking about something and it's just like nagging you and nagging you, then just walk until it leaves your head, in whatever way that you work through that. And I started doing that mainly because I would go on these really long walks whenever I lived at other places, or whenever I would be on tour in Europe or something. I would walk a lot just to kind of get ready before a show, reset things. And so I did think that it would be helpful, and I just started doing that. I started just going on these really long walks and working through a lot of my uh, sort of like hangups about what was causing um, different stress points and things like that. And it would be, sometimes it would just be like a mile, sometimes it would end up being 6 or 7 miles. And I think that's whenever I started feeling like at least I had a tool to like move forward in my life. Whereas before, I was using things that were like short fixes, like, drinking too much, or like um ordering some like gross pizza at 3 in the morning or something, or like all of these things that were, quick sort of problem solvers to get my mind off something. Um, what I found at that moment was, oh, I might have like found like an actual tool that I can use like for the rest of my life to make sure that I don't get like in a spot this dark again. And that felt really good to me. I mean, and past that, that was like pretty early in the process of all of this. But like whenever I did start getting use of my hands again and start playing guitar again, I um, I went on this short tour opening for the Mountain Goats, and then right after that, I did a house show tour. And there was this moment where I was just like, on the house show tours, I would just sit in someone's living room without like a PA or anything, and um, I had my guitar just like on my lap, and I was playing. And there was this moment during one of the sets where I just like leaned my head on the saddle of the guitar body and just like felt the vibrations of it like kind of moving through my face. And it was so moving to me, and I just realized it was just like this really special moment of kind of getting back to that feeling of why I started like writing songs in the first place, which was, to make a connection with people. And at that moment, what I felt was like this instrument, causing these vibrations through my arms and my head and everything. And um, knowing like how special that moment was, that I was getting to do that again whenever I thought that I wasn't ever going to be able to play guitar again. Um, so yeah, I mean, those are like two moments in my head that sort of stand out as real sort of bright lights of moving forward, I think.
Yeah. We just have like, I guess it's human nature, and then also just like the society we live in. You're always kind of taught to just find the quick fix. It's the reason why people smoke cigarettes. Just that little bit of to take whatever tension away, and that I guess we never really look for what are the long term fixes. So yeah, it's walking. Did you was it a lot of like just silent walking, or did you were you playing music or podcasts or anything like that? What was your kind of your go to when it came to that?
I think at the beginning, yeah, it was just silent. I mean, this is still like a thing I do every day. Like I walk about 6 miles a day still, and I'm at the point now where sometimes I listen to podcasts and music and stuff. But I think when I first started doing it, it was just like no headphones. It was mainly because I didn't know where to walk yet, and I was afraid I was going to get ran over. I think I was just kind of like, I think I was freaked out that if I had headphones on, that like a giant Ford F-350 truck would like run me over because they aren't used to seeing people walking. Um, so I didn't have headphones, but it also helped, I think, with the meditative process of it, just not having music and stuff. But now that I know where to walk and not get ran over, plus the town that I live in now is has built a lot of sidewalks recently, so it's been really helpful for me. But yeah, I think at the time I was just kind of walking in silence, but now I kind of switch it up depending on my mood.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I don't I live in Lubbock, so it's not very walker friendly either.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, I don't know. It's I don't know. But one of the things I was going to ask about was the the physical aspects. Like you were not you couldn't really play guitar. Did you have to like um I guess like how did that change the way you played guitar, or did it?
Oh yeah, it completely did. Like, because even though I have like feeling in my hands again, and I still have pretty bad tendinitis and carpal tunnel that I still deal with. And basically what I've started doing just to kind of hopefully not get into a spot where my hands get that bad again is I've started like writing in open tunings a lot more, so my hands aren't like holding down, you know, barred chords all the time and things that would, cause like tension to like nerves and muscles around my hands. So a lot more open tuning stuff. So that way my hands just get like a break um, during songs.
Right.
That's the main thing, which I just like never did open tunings before that really. But whenever I started having these issues, that was something that I noticed helped me a lot more. So that's something that I've been working in a lot more, which has changed the way that I write songs too. It's kind of hilarious, really. It's it's hard to call like really awful things that happen to you like blessing in disguises because it feels like so cliche and stuff. But there are like really interesting things that have happened due to this. Like I've written a lot. I think grown as a writer in a lot of ways because of this, because I've kind of been forced to learn how to play the guitar in a different way, which is interesting.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, like, has it affected like the writing process, and what has it done to older songs? How do you, what do you do then with older songs?
Um, I mean, so it's really interesting because this year was supposed to be the year that I was going to get back into really like full on touring. and like doing headlining shows, like full hour and a half sets. Um, but really, I haven't tested out like what that's like doing like a full set over and over and over for like an extended amount of time, because since 2017, when I had to start canceling tours because of my hand issues, I've really only done sort of short tours opening for other artists. So those are like 30, 45-minute sets. Um, it's really not enough time for my hands to really start like getting affected. So it's kind of interesting. Like and in those sets I would play older songs, but I would kind of make my set list to where if I had a song that was going to be, a lot of barred chords or something, then I would do like an easier open tuning type song next. So just to give my hands like a break for a song, that sort of thing. And that's an easy set to make if you're just trying to figure out 30 or 45 minutes. Plus I talk a lot during my sets too. Like I tell stories and things. So that's a break as well. But yeah, I haven't actually got to try out how it's going to start affecting me in the long run as like a headlining artist who has to do like hour and a half long sets for every night for 2 months or something. That was kind of what this record and the tours surrounding this record were supposed to be, the first sort of glimpses into that. So I'll let you know whenever we get back around to touring, I guess.
Yeah, I kind of figured it would be one of those things where like you weren't changing songs necessarily, but you were just like spacing them out differently.
Yeah, exactly.
This episode is sponsored by Wicker's Mesquite Smoked Jalapeno Jelly. It's owned and operated by my buddy Wes Wicker, who makes the jelly in small batches for the best quality and freshness. He smokes the peppers with mesquite and uses pure cane sugar to make the jelly. What you get is this great blend of smoky, sweet, and spicy. It's addictively savory. For those uninitiated, Wicker's is a great addition to any chef's kitchen. Part of what makes Wicker's so great is just how versatile it really is. For starters, it makes a great meat glaze. Throw it on a batch of hot wings, use it on some pork ribs, some pork chops, really whatever you can think of. Eat it on biscuits, cornbread, bagels, or toast. Throw it on a ham or turkey sandwich. Another super simple but effective way is to get some cream cheese, throw some Wickers on top, and then grab your favorite cracker. Wickers is currently stocked at a handful of places in Lubbock and on the South Plains, as well as some Fort Worth and DFW locations. But the easiest way to get your hands on a jar is to head over to wickerstx.com. That's WICKERSTX.com. I'll throw a link into the show notes for good measure. They currently come in 2 varieties, original and now hot, if you need just a little bit more kick in your bite. You can order anything from 1 jar to a case of 12, whatever fits your needs. Again, that's wickerstx.com. Okay, back to the show. So, yeah, I don't know. It's so strange how, like you said, it's you're trying not to be cliche about something bad happening to being a blessing in disguise, but it is interesting to see how when your hand's forced a certain way, how you can you adapt and change to still be able to do the same things, or it opens up the proverbial door to other new things. So,
Yeah.
Now, like you said, you recorded the record about a year ago. I guess correct me if I'm wrong, but you self-produced everything, right, on this record?
Yes.
What goes into that? Like, where I guess like is it 2 different kind of brains where you're thinking as an artist and then as a producer, or is it not necessarily even remotely close to that?
I think I can only speak for myself. I've worked with a lot of producers that are producers in more of an organizational sense, where it's like, they make a list of what instruments. There's like I don't know if you've ever walked into like a recording studio where a band is like making an album and they have like a dry erase board and a list of every song and then all the instruments that are going to be on each song, and then they like check them off as they record them, sort of thing. That is like a very common sort of method, and I've worked with a lot of producers that work more like in an organizational fashion, that basically they're there to make sure all of that stuff gets done, be an additional creative brain, of course, but then also sort of serve as session psychologists too, because there's a lot of like stuff that happens in recording sessions that people don't really understand, which is like a lot of frustrations, a lot of self-denial, a lot of lack of self-confidence, a lot of just like all of these things that end up happening when you're like in the studio trying to make something really important. And so a producer has to be like, okay, what can I do to get this singer to sing even though she's like having a breakdown in the corner? Or how do I move this session along if like this drummer showed up and he's, can't get this groove right because he's like, I don't know, hungover or something. So, I mean, those are all aspects of a producer. And I did take on all of that. But at the same time, this record is so different for me than my other records because it came to me like so completely. Like normally I write the songs and I'm happy to open them up to interpretation to the other instrumentalists and musicians that I'm working with. But this record, when I wrote the songs, like the arrangements, the sounds, the feeling, that it came to me so completely that in a way it was like I was the only one that felt like I was the one that I was like, I have to produce this because I can't explain all of this to someone else and make sure that it's done right. And so I think for me on this record, it was being an artist for the whole process. The producer, the recording artist, all together was like one project for me. It was just like one massive persona I had to take on. That's not how it is for all of my records. I'm very happy a lot of times in the past to be like, here are these songs that I wrote. Like, what do you think we should do? Like, that's cool. I don't like that. Just kind of make it more of an open conversation. And this was a pretty much like a manifesto for me, I think. So, yeah, that's sort of where I lie on producer artist meanings, I guess, at least for this record.
Yeah, I guess like we romanticize the idea of the producer always being like a Phil Spector and like, or like a Rick Rubin or just like a massive personality. And yeah, I guess it's not, it's why they're the outliers, and most of the time it's just the organizational skills too.
Yeah.
That's a big part.
Well, I think something that I've noticed, and I could be wrong on this because I'm still learning as a producer myself, but I think that larger than life persona that producers have, that like all the famous producers have, I think that is it's a technique as much as anything else, because the one thing that bands and artists need while they're making a record is like a like shining light, something that's like inspiring to them 100% of the time. And weirdly enough, like a producer kind of becomes that. They need to wake up every morning and be like, whoa, this like really cool, bizarre, genius person is like in charge of my project and like is making it happen for us, you know? Like, so I think that that's where that whole sort of romanticized persona of a producer comes from. And they all have their own thing, right? Like, I mean, like Rick Rubin's is like Zen producer, you know? So like, it's like, it's kind of a neat thing, honestly. It's a technique as much as all of the other learned techniques of being a producer, I think.
Yeah, it's I always kind of envision like T-Bone Burnett like never talking to the person. He talks to someone else and then they talk to you like he
I
just
could
like
totally see that. Like he only talks to the engineer and
yeah.
doesn't talk to anybody else. Like I could totally see that being the case. I don't know if he does that, but yeah.
Yeah, and like not even like out loud, just like whispers to them, like kind of thing. I don't know.
Writes it down on a piece of paper.
Yeah. So like I'm a big sports person, so I love like reading books about like specific seasons of a team, and it feels like there's a lot of shared qualities between like a coach and a producer, because with a coach it's almost not always about the X's and O's. It's about like, you know, handling the egos and knowing who has the fragile ego and who needs to be like tempered down and who needs to be built up and all of those aspects. And that's like what's so interesting to me about I guess like the making the record process, and then obviously in relation to sports, like it's almost never for me about like the game itself, but it's like the soap opera around the game.
Yeah.
So
I mean, not to get back into the sports thing, but I mean, I being from Oklahoma, everyone knows the legacy of Barry Switzer, you know, and he was definitely, I think, that kind of like coach of hand, like knowing, you know, what egos went where, that sort of thing. Not necessarily an X and O sort of coach.
yeah, it's the this goes we could talk about recruiting and all that kind of
Is
stuff.
this a Barry
But like,
Switzer
yeah.
podcast now?
But it's partly like the where I guess like for comparison's sake, here at Texas Tech, obviously Cliff Kingsbury was the coach for a while, and even though like he seemed really really cool and like, you know, wore Ray-Bans and like was just really cool on the sidelines and connected to the players in a lot of ways, more so he was an X's and O's coach. And what that means is in a way was like he was one of the things that people were critical of was that he wasn't a great recruiter. And you know, if you look at like him versus now, of course, Barry Switzer has won championships and stuff like that, right? And Cliff Kingsbury didn't. But part of the big part of with Barry or like any of these coaches like that is them walking into your living room and being a larger than life superhero in a sense, right? And
Yeah.
that's why they'd get. Now, there's probably some other reasons too, money and drop bags and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
why they get like the big players and sometimes other teams don't. So, yeah, let's go back to the record here. One of the things that I really liked about this record was there's, I guess like you really create a almost like a dreamy kind of soundscape with a lot of these songs. There's sometimes a sense of like a fever dream sense. And I guess like what was your intentions of trying to make some of these songs a layered kind of dreamy sense that had a lot of like dark tones and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, like, once again, I think you really picked up on something. I think that that's like, 100% what I was trying to capture, mainly because I don't know if I'm sure that anybody that has lived any amount of time is familiar with that feeling of trying to think back on a part of their life and being like, I know that I lived that. I know that I lived through that, but I just don't remember it in the way. It's like stuff that you watch on home videos, like when you're a kid, and that's like why you remember things, not necessarily because you innately remember them, but just because you remember the videotaped memory. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I think
That
a lot of people talk about how with memory, it's not that you remember the initial memory. It's like you remember the last time you remembered it.
exactly. And that was that feeling, which I'm sure there's some like amazing German word for it or something that I just don't know, where they like they always have like a way of creating this like word for something that there's not a word for. But that feeling of remembering the last time you remembered a memory was like what I was trying to capture, like with the production elements of this, because even though that time in my life, this like really dark sort of mental and physical breakdown state wasn't that long ago, it was 2017. I still don't remember it in the way that um, I remember it innately. I remember it as like I was looking at a photograph or something. It's hard to remember myself being the person that went through it, I guess. And so I was trying to kind of capture that feeling, and I think fever dream is like a pretty good way to explain it. To me, from the production standpoint, the thing that I thought would capture that was we did a lot of tape looping, just as sort of background ambiance and vibe. I think that kind of helps put you in this state of fever dream, I guess. With the song Pastime, there's like this sort of um, droning, uh, chanting background vocals I think I wanted those there because I kind of wanted you to feel like, have I been listening to this song for like 30 seconds or 30 minutes? I don't really know. So there's just like elements like that where I wanted it to be accessible enough for people to sit down and listen to it without being um, really, you know, uncomfortable or anything. But I also wanted them to every once in a while just check back in with themselves and be like, what's going on again? Like, where am I? What's going on? And that was very apparent, always like on in my mind when I was like thinking of different things for the production of this. And mainly what we used for that was like synthesizers and tape looping.
Yeah, I also think like the when you guys bring in some horns has like it really sets part of the tone and mood of of the song. And I think like apparent like the most probably apparent on that is like the song Garden Dove. Like it just feels like that is such a huge part of that song.
Yeah, I think like putting a saxophone in a song, it like immediately kind of puts you in like movie soundtrack territory, which is always good if you're trying to like um, create that sense of make believe or like larger than life sort of thing. Just stick a saxophone on it. I think you're good. Like,
Yeah, yeah. It's there's there's a I guess I'm not like a musician at all, and I was never in band or anything like that. So, but there's this one saxophone player. I guess he plays like I think it's like a double baritone or a baritone sax. I'm not sure, but Colin Seston, I think is that his name. That's what it kind of reminded me of. He played on a lot of like stuff with like the Arcade Fire or like Bon Iver, and he had some
Okay.
solo stuff as well that's just all instrumentation, and it's it's probably a little bit too out there for like most people. It's not like I listen to it every day or something like that, but that's like a lot of the vibes I got was like just that kind of like I don't know, like you said like you didn't want it to be uncomfortable, but like there is this like a little sense of like whenever you're in open water. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
so I don't
Well,
know.
what you're talking about, like that, the guy that plays on my records, he does have these sort of like specialty saxophone he uses. So they're not like the sort of super tenorary saxophones that you hear like on a like E Street Band record that's like
Right.
jazz, or like you're like, oh, Bill Clinton on the Jay Leno show, like that sort of thing. Like
Yeah.
it's not bringing you to that sort of mindset. It's
Saturday
taking
Night
you
Live.
to, yeah, I think
Yeah.
like open water is like a little bit dangerous because it's like this weird, um, yeah, like that super kind of creepy, deep baritone sort of sound that we layer with clarinets a lot of time, which gives that additional sort of uneasy organic feel because of the reeds and stuff. So I that's a really interesting way to put it. But yeah, I think open water is probably a good descriptor.
Yeah. One of the things you said a minute ago that I find really interesting was about how it's the whole like the fading photograph thing, the memory, like you not really remembering yourself then, but like trying to not necessarily even trying to get back in that headspace, but trying to like capture whatever that is. It's what I thought about was, and this is just one of those very very super simple, probably like way too basic of a comparison, but you know, like whenever you're on Facebook and you get like Facebook memories, and a memory will pop up of something you said 6 or 7, 8 years ago, and you're like, why would I have thought that? Why? And that's what I've like. It's sometimes it's so strange to think back on a the former version of yourself, and you're like you almost don't recognize who that person is.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
I actually there's a song on the record that I wrote that is like kind of about that feeling called High Horse, and it's just like about that surge of different emotions where you're like diving into that thought about seeming like a different person, the person that experienced those past events um feels so different from like who you currently are. So yeah, I'm really interested in that idea as like a human state, because I'm sure that it gets even weirder like the older you get. Like what's it going to feel like in another 10 or 20 years when I have like multiple lifetimes to look back on, you know? It's an interesting thought, and I'm like really into thinking about it and digging into it.
yeah, because obviously, like you know, the title of this, a small death. You know, is it? What I wonder is if you're gonna feel like this was I don't want to say a phase, but like you know a phase of like a rough patch, and then like this is like just a different version of you, or if this is like a version of that you feel like you've really I don't know like obviously you've changed and evolved and gone through a lot of different things here, but like is it are you going to look back and think of this as just a moment in your life or as the moment in your life?
Hmm. Um, I mean, okay, so I'm not like really into astrology, but a lot of my friends are, and they mention this thing called like I think it's called like Saturn return, which is basically like when the when Saturn comes back to meet like your natal Saturn. So like where it was when you were born. It takes about 29 and a half, 30 years, something like that. So all of this shit started happening with me like around that time in my life when I was that age. And so I I think there is something about that process that I like to think about kind of completing a rotation, I guess. And that just becomes sort of like a rebirth time. So maybe in another 30 years, I feel a similar rotation. And maybe I just have like hopefully by then, like the emotional intelligence to deal with it a bit better at the beginning of it, I guess. So I have a feeling these things happen all the time. Like everything is always starting again. And that's just like how it goes. And you just get better at dealing with the restarts. I think.
Yeah. The astrology thing, that's always like something that, you know, I don't really believe in it either, but every once in a while you come across something about your sign. It's all over the place. And then you're like, well, I don't know. Maybe there's maybe there's some, like, I don't know. You can pick things from it and apply it to. I guess that's what I'm saying. Is like there's you can pick. There's going to be something good in everything that you can apply to your life and get better from, or you know what I'm saying. So
yeah, I always wish I was like more into the astrology thing. I've just never really like gotten into it. Because I think personally, like I don't feel very attached to it, to getting to know about it. Like I've never really had an interest in it, but all of my friends that are really into it are all really cool people. And so I'm always just like, I think I'm probably missing out by not getting into this, but also I just don't find the pull to it, I guess. But yeah, I do think that the Saturn return idea though is pretty interesting and neat. And yeah.
I don't know. It is interesting to read about. It's like also kind of like there's I guess there's two kind of popular personality tests, like the Enneagram thing, and then there's like the Myers-Briggs personality test, where I also go kind of, you can't just like categorize people like into 16 different kinds of people or whatever. But every time I read something about whatever I am, I'm like, well, okay, they've hit the nail on the head on this one, but I don't know. So, yeah, it's been really great talking with you about this record and about life in 2020 here, Saturn return, all that kind of stuff. Okay, everybody, that's it for this one. Be sure to check out A Small Death by Samantha Crain, out Friday, July 17th. Check out episode sponsors The Blue Light Live and Wicker's Jalapeno Jelly. Check out the New Slang merch store while you're at it. Okay, I'll see y'all Thursday for another episode.